Hello and welcome to Jessie Bear Book Club, the only book club where we don't always talk about books, but this time we are. Today we are discussing the Mists of Avalon series, and it's more of a character study. This series was written by Marion Zimmer Bradley, and is a classic in the mystical, magical world of authors, and somehow I'd managed to overlook it for years. I won't be talking about the plot of this book, because if you're on this channel, you're probably very familiar with the Arthurian legends. This is more of a character study from my own perspective, covering the major players in this series. I find this series particularly interesting because of the family dynamics at play throughout it. I got this book on Audible. No, this isn't an ad, I just really like Audible, and I'd like everyone to know that it's free on there at the minute if you've got an account. And that's a good 50 hours or so of listening. This is a combination book which combines books within the series, so you've got The Mistress of Magic, The High Queen, The Mists of Avalon, and I think the other one's called The High Priestess. But they're all bundled together in chronological order. I think you can buy them individually, but the bundle is more common from my research. The characters we are going to be discussing today are Igraine, Viviane, Morgaine, and Gwenhwyfar, and we might talk a little bit about Morgause, Lancelot, and Arthur as we go through this review. Let's start with the character that opens the book, Igraine. Igraine is married young to a man she doesn't know for political purposes. Igraine wants to feel loved, but all she feels is abandoned by her family, especially her older sister Viviane. Igraine looks for love in every small detail of her family, and when she finally finds it with Uther Pendragon, she neglects her husband, neglects her children, and runs straight to Uther, something she later regrets deeply because once grown, her children, Morgaine and Arthur, are strangers to her. After Uther's death, and even before, Igraine leans heavily into Christianity to mask her unhappiness at only having 2 children, but I feel she is also masking her unhappiness at being abandoned by Avalon and her family. She has a convert's zeal for Christianity because her roots, her family, and the magic she was born with have left her. But she does have a moment of magic and rejects Christianity right at the end, being true to herself. Moving on to our next character, we have Viviane, the Lady of the Lake and High Priestess. Viviane is bitter and obsessed with the fact she is aging. Her approaching death makes her obsessive about making some mark on the world while she still has time and keeping Avalon in the world, but not of the world. A self-centered, hurt woman who hurts other women in turn, claiming it's all for the greater good and for her great goddess. She is very concerned about her beauty, or lack thereof beauty, resenting her younger sisters Igraine and Morgause for being beautiful. And I think the fact that Morgaine, her niece and protege, isn't beautiful is one of the reasons Viviane really likes her. Viviane is so twisted on the subject of beauty that when her dear friend Priscilla is dying, the first thing Viviane thinks about her is that all her plump prettiness is gone. I just like Viviane immensely. She is a religious zealot for magic, but not just being a zealot the way Igraine is, where she wants to practice her religion. She wants to force it on others and is prepared to use violence and magic and become a martyr, all in the name of her great goddess. Moving on to the main character, we have Morgaine of the Fairies. And Morgaine has a massive insecurity problem, stemming from the fact she was ignored by her mother Igraine after she remarried. Morgaine also suffers from some postnatal depression, I feel. The fact that her baby was taken away from her makes it hard for her to form emotional attachments to people. Morgaine also has a very millennial tendency, where she overanalyzes every single thing to the point of robbing herself of joy. The apple orchard scene with Lancelot is a good example of this. I think Morgaine is naturally kind. Her treatment of Kevin shows this, and I think when you compare Gwenhwyfar's treatment of Kevin to Morgaine's treatment of Kevin, you get a real sense of how kind Morgaine actually is. But that all changes when Morgaine becomes the Queen of North Wales, Marion, and her journey back to becoming a priestess yet again. This journey turns her bitter, and I really start to dislike her at this point. You could also say that this was all caused by Viviane's martyrdom, but I don't think so. I think Morgaine simply doesn't have much mothering instinct, and forced away from court and intrigue and the people she did have bonds with, she goes a little bit mad, morphing into Viviane. But unlike Viviane, Morgaine is naturally kind, and when she sees the hurt and pain her actions have caused, she now knows that war is not the answer and that Avalon needs to retreat into the mists. But I still can't forgive her for the way she treated poor Urians. He was so kind to her, and she's so mean to him, and the things she does to his sons, ugh. Now we have the High Queen, Gwenhwyfar. This girl obviously has an anxiety disorder and is agoraphobic. These disorders are made worse by the fact that Gwenhwyfar is unable to do her duty as she sees it and produce an heir for Arthur. I feel Gwenhwyfar and Igraine are two sides of the same coin. They were trapped in good but loveless marriages, lusting after different men. But whereas Igraine had the strength to take what she wanted and face hardships as they came, Gwenhwyfar doesn't. And this reminds me of the Russian saying, the same water that hardens the egg softens the potato. And Gwenhwyfar is definitely a soft potato. Gwenhwyfar and Igraine both lean heavily into Christianity to mask their unhappiness at not having children, but Gwenhwyfar's nervous personality makes her afraid of anything magical and makes her very narrow-minded. I think Gwenhwyfar is naturally a cruel person. As I stated before, her treatment of Kevin when compared to that of Morgaine's treatment of Kevin is so vastly different. I think at her core, Gwenhwyfar is quite cruel, but her life and the things that happen to her, without giving many spoilers, make her crueler as the books go on. Saying all of that though, Gwenhwyfar is still my favourite character in this series. To briefly touch on some of the other main players in this series, we have Morgause, Igraine's younger sister, and Morgaine's aunt. Morgause is self-serving and shallow. That's pretty much all I have to say about her. And then we, of course, have Lancelot and Arthur. Lancelot's struggle with his sexuality is very well portrayed in this book. I think it's great the way they subverted the love triangle that is Gwenhwyfar, Lancelot, and Arthur and turned it completely on its head, having Lancelot lust after Arthur and Arthur lust after Gwenhwyfar, and then Gwenhwyfar lust after Lancelot in this weird triangle, and the scene where they have the threesome. Enough said. Overall, I give this series a 7 out of 10. Some of the magical scenes were a little bit overdone for me, but I think magic's very hard to write well, and even though some of it was very good and very grounded, the fairy realm and the wild hunt weren't really my cup of tea. But it's still a very good book. I think Marion Zimmer Bradley did a really good job rethinking the traditional Arthurian legend and gave all the characters brilliant backstories, brilliant character traits, and really fleshed them out so they weren't two-dimensional. If you enjoyed this review, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. We cover loads of stuff, lots of historical fiction, Philippa Gregory, A Song of Ice and Fire. We do live streams. It's pretty interactive, so get involved. And until next time, don't be a high queen having an affair with a man who's in love with your husband. Until next time,